Hello and welcome to another episode of Radec's Rotation, where I find the most interesting guests all across the internet and pretty much grill them on everything, really. Today I'm joined by a very special guest. He's probably one of the most interesting people in games media, and I hope this interview will tell you guys why. He's the associate producer of Last Stand Media and Lillymo Games. He's the co-host of the Handsome Phantom podcast, excuse me. He has a YouTube channel called Ben is Handsome, which is fantastic. And he's also probably the greatest Sea of Thieves streamer of all time, judging by my lack of expertise. But I'm joined by Ben Smith. Ben, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for that intro. To be called one of the most interesting people is quite the honor, I suppose. I don't know if it's true, but I'm going to just accept it as the compliment you meant it as.
I know it's like the most generic thing to say. It's like, oh, you're like Anthony Bourdain whenever someone's like interesting. But like in this case, I feel like you kind of are, man, because like especially on this
stuff.
Yeah, especially on this last episode of Constellation, you revealed something. It was like, wait, what? You did that too? What the hell? So
I don't even know what you're talking about.
So I just got to ask you all about that stuff. But
Sure.
Let's tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what do you do for living right now? And yeah.
So, I'm Ben. I live just north of Pittsburgh. I've got a wife, 2 kids. They're almost 8 and almost 10. They'll be 8 and 10 in October. I work as the associate producer at Last Stand Media. We do 6.5. I say 6.5 because we have 7 shows, but one of them is every other week. So we put out a bunch of stuff every week. I do all the editing for the audio side of that. And then I produce our live events, and we do like different stage shows throughout the country in different cities. And then I also, as you mentioned, work at Lillymo Games, which is co-owned by the owner of Last Stand Media, and also Barry Johnson. And it's a small little game dev studio. I do a lot of the production work there and like help make sure we, communicate with the platform holders and all that kind of stuff. And pretty much any time I have something going on. So I do a lot of different stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like you're just constantly busy, man, which is great. Like, you're, getting work done, but
that's not what my wife says.
Well, it is in the realm of gaming, so I kind of feel like I do have to ask you this for our first question. Like, what's your history of video games? Like, what were some of the consoles you grew up with, your favorite games, and why were video games like the medium you were passionate about?
That's a great question, and one that I never actually consider. Just like video games have been in my life since as long as I can remember. One of my first memories of playing video games was playing the original Super Mario Brothers with my cousin Brad.
Oh wow! You got many years of life on me.
Yeah, a few years, maybe a few years. That was probably like 1993. I think I was probably 1991. I was probably 3 years old.
Damn.
And I don't remember if I was any good at it or not, but I remember playing it with a little sippy cup in my hand. That's a memory I have. I remember very little else about that, that experience, but I have that flashback. And I just always have been interested in video games. Had the NES. I remember it broke when I was a kid, and as being a kid, I tore it apart and tried to fix it. And I don't know, I was 4 or 5 years old, probably didn't work. And then moving on up through there, I ended up getting Super Nintendo and would play Genesis when I was lucky enough to go over to a friend's house that had one. I didn't have one until a few years later. It was, they were already done making them. I got one secondhand or something. And then up through the PlayStation, Xbox, I've owned pretty much every game console, played pretty much everything. Started playing PC games, really simple, point and click games in the early 90s, probably. And then, just stuck with mouse and keyboard for a lot of different stuff on through. Now that's my primary platform, really. So I play pretty much everything that I can that it looks interesting to me. And I've owned almost every system almost every major, I never had
not 3DO or some shit like that.
Yeah, I didn't have that stuff, but some of that stuff I've gotten retroactively and never plugged it in, but I have it because it's video games. I have to have it, right?
Yeah.
So
So I do want to ask, since you I don't mean this as like a negative. You literally do have many more years of life on me.
Yeah.
What was like the perception of video games back in like the early '90s, mid '90s, and even the late '90s, like pretty much the whole '90s? Was it as like I know video games are obviously bigger now than they were back then, mainly because there's way more people playing video games. People always say like, oh, gaming back then, like it, people like looked down upon it, but is that actually true, or was
I
it pretty
mean,
chill?
I think it was true, but from my perspective, I didn't really notice or care, I guess. So I was born in '88, and so I mean, until the time I was in high school, I never really thought about it. It's like I'm a kid, I'm playing video games. Like that's what
Yeah.
you do when you're a kid, and that's what people expect too, especially then. And there is still that perception now a little bit. And then probably about the point where that kind of became a narrative more so that I was aware of, it was becoming less of an issue for most people. There's the train. Sorry, there's a train coming through. I don't know
It's
if
like
anyone's going to hear
he's
it or
probably
not.
playing Uncharted 2. He's fun.
It probably is.
Yeah.
It's weird because I'm like in a valley and the train just like echoes through it. Anyway, it's fine. It sounds really loud, but it's not that loud like actually in my ears. Anyway,
Okay, yeah, you're good. Don't worry.
all right. The perception, I didn't really notice it until I was already at the point where everybody was accepting video games. So like when videos became pop culture is when I became more aware of the fact that they used to not be pop culture. What was more of a nerdy thing, get made fun of thing when I was in like junior high school, and I won't say I got made fun of it for it, but there were definitely people who mocked it, was comics. And I was always super into comics and superheroes and stuff like that. And I remember like having an Iron Man backpack when I was a kid and like somebody laughing at it. And then I remember in like 2008 when Iron Man 1 came out and I was at the theater and I had like early access, like one of the people who had been waiting in line for like 12 hours probably, that ended up being way behind me because I had like a connection. They were like, "Oh, hey Ben, how you doing?" And I was like, I looked at them, I'm like, you used to make fun of me for like an Iron Man.
Oh my god.
So like video games for me have always been like, seems like they were popularly accepted, but comics became like that thing that was originally not accepted and I really liked it. And then gradually now it's like one of the biggest things in the world, right? Like comic book movies and everything else. So yeah, it's an interesting journey. But as far as your original question, yeah, I don't really know if the video games were looked down upon because I was a kid. So I didn't care.
You touch on something interesting that I didn't really think of, is that like, yeah, comics have been around for decades and decades at this point, especially like even before Marvel and DC, there's always comic books. But did you ever expect it to be as mainstream and in the zeitgeist and pop culture as it is? Because like for my context, I was born '98, so I grew up with like Marvel cartoons, DC cartoons, X-Men Evolution, Spider-Man, X-Men, the Batman show. So it was always like, it's like how you felt about video games back then. It's like you're a kid, you're kind of expecting for it to be like shit you like consume. But then 2008 and with both Iron Man and Dark Knight, I would say it changed everything. So how does it feel like for being a hardcore comic book fan, seeing the medium just blow up?
It's kind of weird. Like it's good because like I'm glad that more people are being exposed to those storylines and characters, because I think they're like some of the best in the world. Like there's such a long legacy there. And obviously there's tons of really crappy comic book storylines from many, many years ago. But the point is like there's a whole new world that people are experiencing now that they didn't used to. And to be honest, like I'm not a gatekeepery type of person. Pretty much like if you like something, like it, please like it, even if I liked it already. But there is a little part of me with like superhero stuff. And I'm like, you're experiencing this for the first time in, 2023. I read a comic book with that storyline in 1994. Like it just, there's a little bit of part of me that's like, okay, come on, catch up. But again, I'm super happy for people to be like into it now, even if they weren't before. And I definitely did not expect that to ever be the thing that changed. I always was a proponent that like video games were going to take over. And honestly, I thought they would take over more than they have. I kind of thought they'd be more like pop culture with every age group by this point, just because of technology, but we're getting there, but not quite yet.
I do want to ask you about Iron Man specifically, because you definitely have more knowledge about this. I remember a brief moment. There's like Iron Man pre the movie and like his role in the Marvel universe, and Iron Man after.
Yeah.
the movie came out. So the Iron Man I remember before um the movie was like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 Iron
Oh yeah.
Man and Marvel vs. Capcom Iron Man, where he was a character in there, but he wasn't like the main star or the main focal point.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much true for like the rest of the Avengers. So how did you feel when you saw Iron Man? Would you consider him like a B tier, C tier hero before the MCU?
I would say that's probably true. I
Okay.
liked Iron Man. He had his own series, and I read it. Of course, I would like go to the comic book store and buy, 50 comics for 10 cents a piece. And it was all out of order. One might have been from 20 years ago. One might have been brand new. And I just read them because I didn't care about the storylines. I just like the characters and the the fact that it was a cartoon. It was a comic on the page. So yeah, I definitely think there was a revolution, and it's kind of interesting because like the perception of Iron Man changed through that movie. Really, like he became part of the mainstream. And also, I feel like the person who played him, Robert Downey Jr., before that had been like down and out. Career was kind of over. Obviously, they had a few hits before that, before Iron Man, more recent, but like that also kind of transformed him into being a household name at the time. Like people knew him before that, sure, but he had lots of issues and everything. And so like it's weird how the character of Iron Man and the actor that played Iron Man were kind of like on a similar redemption arc, I guess. I don't know. I don't. It's kind of cool to think about.
Yeah, it's cool because like anytime you see Iron Man in a video game now, it's like, all right, this is going to be an MCU inspired version, but how MCU is inspired it is
Right.
going to be. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like if you're an Iron Man fan and you don't like RDJ's take on it, you kind of have to deal with it,
Right. Yeah.
unfortunately. And I really like that character, so
Oh,
I'm not complaining.
it's really funny because you know how a lot of times when they announce the casting for somebody in a movie, a lot of times even if they end up being great, you're like, I don't know about that. I can't see that. When they announced RDJ for Iron Man, I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Like
Oh
he's a
wow.
cocky, arrogant son of a bitch. Like that's RDJ too. So that was one that I really liked when it started. But definitely the man and the character became much more through his portrayal, I think.
Well, I was gonna go down this comic road, but I want now. I'm just having so many questions in my head, so
Yeah.
I'll leave it to two more.
Okay.
Do you think we've peaked in the comic book movie genre?
Um, I think we have, but I don't think we have to. I think if we get some good creatives in there that are more worried about artistic integrity than they are about dollars and cents, then we could probably see more good stuff. And in fairness, like I do, even the bad stuff that's come out recently, I haven't watched Secret Invasion. I heard that was awful, but even the stuff that's like B tier, C tier, even that's come out lately, I've been like, this is still cool to have comic stuff. Like, it's cool to me as a longtime comic fan.
Is that how you felt when you watched Morbius?
When I watched Morbius, no, that's not Radec. That's not how I felt when I watched Morbius. When I watched
Okay.
Morbius, I thought, yeah, this seems about right.
Oh, okay. All
For
right.
what the character is. No, yeah, and there's movies like that I'm like, this is not supposed to be taken seriously. And I feel like there's so many people that are like, oh, Marvel's, they jumped the shark and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. Maybe too much of a good thing is a bad thing. But for those who enjoy it, is it? I mean, NCIS has been on for like 45 years, right?
Yeah.
There's a billion episodes. People still like that. I'm not saying that's good television, but it's enjoyable to those people who like it, not to me.
Yeah. It's
But
a comfort food.
yeah, absolutely. So I don't know that we've peaked, but once you get companies that are, larger than life like Disney involved, um, there's so many people involved and so many shareholders and money involved. I don't know. I think there's an opportunity, but I mean, we just had Guardians 3 come out
Fantastic.
a little while ago, and that felt like early MCU to me.
Yeah.
And it's sad that that's the case. That it was like, oh well, this feels like an old thing, even though it's really not that old of a medium at this point. But uh, I think there's still hope when you get directors who care, actors who care, producers who care, etc. So yeah, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of hope, I should mention the new DCU movie
Mhm.
universe. So, I should ask before: were you more of a Marvel guy or DC guy?
I was more of a Marvel guy as far as like the overall universe, but I really like specific characters in the DC universe. As far as comics, obviously Batman has always
Yeah.
been a big one, and I liked a lot of his villains a lot. Um, they're some of the most iconic villains in comic book history, I think, are in the DC universe. So,
Oh,
but I was
absolutely.
definitely, as far as like knowledge base and overall how much of it I've read, I'm probably more of a Marvel guy, but I like DC depending on the characters.
So when DC started their whole extended universe of movies, starting with Man of Steel, how did you feel when you watched that movie, and what was your feelings, like your predictions for the rest of the DCU? Did that movie was like after you watched that movie, were you like, I don't know about this?
Specifically, Man of Steel.
Yeah, Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, because Batman vs Superman really was like the
Yeah.
launch of that universe.
Um, I think that when I watch them, and I go into certain. So I'm a pretty big snob when it comes to movies. Like as far as saying this is good or this is bad, but I have the ability to separate whether or not a movie is supposed to be like an artistic, movie, or whether it's supposed to be a fun movie for entertainment's sake. Those movies, I very much felt like they were fun for entertainment's sake. I liked them. I watched Batman vs Superman again last year, and still thought it was fun. I don't think it's a great movie,
No.
but I think that it is a fun movie. Like it's the characters I like. Like it's me playing with the toys as a child, beating the crap out of each other with them, just smacking them into each other. That's what those movies are, and that's why they are fun. That's why they are worth anything to me. I mean, people
Okay.
don't go see Fast and the Furious because in droves because it's a good movie. They see it because it's fun, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know that I ever really thought about like what the future could be. Obviously, the first 10 years of the MCU were so good. You're like, man, maybe this can live up to that. But I just don't think that. I think you have to have the source material, and I don't think that DC didn't have anybody. They had really good people, but they didn't have anybody who was ever up to like Stan Lee, who envisioned in the 50s like this cohesive world full of all these characters. And so none of their, I shouldn't say none of, but like their comics weren't really written with a lot of crossover between them that made sense. There was
Oh,
crossover, but not that
interesting.
like made sense until probably the last 20 years. So you don't have that lineage, you don't have that thought process. The characters don't all work together well. And that's true in the MCU too, but I don't I guess the point here, though, for me is that I don't need it to be a cohesive universe. You could put out 15 Batman movies with different actors and different storylines back to back to back to back to back, and they're not sequels. They're not part of the same. I'm going to enjoy them. Like, I'm probably going to at least find a minor enjoyment in them. So I like that they're trying to do something more cohesive, but I don't know if I don't need that necessarily.
I see. Yeah, I'm rooting for DC
Yeah.
because I'm like you. I prefer Marvel over DC, but I love Batman.
Hmm.
Batman's like my DC touchstone. I think
Yeah.
he's super cool. The villains are awesome.
Yeah.
And well, all right. One last question about comics.
Yeah.
Let's tie it back to video games. So, comic book video games have been huge. You have the Arkham games,
Hmm.
Insomniac Spider-Man, Marvel's Avengers. Shout out to the 5 people who like that game. I'm not one of them. So, what were some of your favorite comic book games growing up?
I'm really bad with remembering names, but the Spider-Man games that were on PS2 and PS3, I think.
Oh, like Shattered
Shattered
Dimensions, Ultimate
Dimensions, Web of
Spider-Man,
Shadows,
Web
Ultimate Spider-Man.
Shadows. Yeah.
Yeah. Those were really good ones. Uh, this is not. It doesn't. I guess it isn't that recent, but it doesn't feel like it. Ultimate Alliance
Oh yes, let's
was
go.
fantastic. Was that 2006 or so?
Yeah,
It's
oh
been
six.
almost 20 years ago, but it feels like not that long ago.
Oh my god.
So there weren't really a ton of good. They weren't necessarily superhero video games. They were more movie tie-in video games about superheroes,
Hmm.
and so I don't know that they quite had it figured out. I did play like Superman 64. I rented it. I think I own it. I do own it now, but I rented it as a kid, and even as a kid, I knew it was absolutely terrible. But I don't feel like there were a lot of good ones back in the day. But more recently, yeah, we've had some good ones. I mean, shout out to Guardians of the Galaxy. Came out a
Oh
couple years
yeah.
ago. Sad that it didn't perform very well, but an absolutely phenomenal game. The Spider-Man games, obviously by Insomniac, have been awesome. I'm playing through um, Marvel, the new
Midnight Suns.
Marvel. Yes, Midnight Suns. Thank
Yeah.
you. Playing through it right now, and it's not necessarily a strong narrative, but it's a fun game.
Okay.
So as long as they don't just start putting them out with little care like they used to, I think we're okay.
And which Marvel or DC character would you like to see have like their own AAA video game
Mm, that's a really good question.
other than Morbius?
Other than Morbius, that's hard to answer. I think a Punisher game would be cool,
Oh yeah, I
and I
forgot.
think it
They
would
used to be Punisher
actually.
games, right?
Um, I don't remember. If
Okay.
there was, I don't remember. I never played them if there was. But I think now in the current landscape of like AAA first person shooters, I think you could do a cool like RPG shooter with
That'd be really
Punisher,
cool.
because like so much of the Punisher is about like the mental stuff going on with him and the
Yeah.
torment, and also how he could torment other people. So yeah.
Yeah, it's anytime I think of Punisher, I just think of like, yeah, this would be like a cool Max Payne clone or
Oh
something
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. He's a
And
badass.
yeah, he's always been cool. Like I liked him in the Daredevil show. I thought
Yeah,
John Bernthal was. There's that one scene with him and Daredevil just arguing about like philosophy and shit. It's like, yeah, this is like fucking really cool. Like what the
yeah,
hell?
yeah.
So, speaking more about video games, and especially during that era, that '90s era, what would you say like were some of the main differences of that era compared to gaming now? Obviously, the internet changed everything, digital
Yeah.
games changed everything, but more about like the little things.
Hmm.
What were some standouts for you?
The little things as far as the actual games or the industry
The
in
game,
general.
I would say about both.
Yeah,
Like, I went to a friend's house last week and he had like a PS2 memory card. I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about memory cards. Like
yeah,
that was like a thing we had to deal with.
right. I think split screen is a huge thing. That I mean, we still have some split screen, and there's games that are coming out now that are delaying or canceling split screen, and that's a big ordeal. But split screen is such a huge part of my like early video game days. Obviously, like way back, we didn't have split screen. It was just one. It was single player for a lot of things, and then you move into the era of split screen, and pretty much anything. It was like if it doesn't have split screen, I'm not playing it, and because I'm going to play it with my friend or whatever. And so I think that's a big thing that we've lost. You mentioned memory cards, and I can only vaguely but very deeply still feel the moments where you'd find out that a save was corrupted and it was on
Oh,
your memory card, and
uh,
I've got probably I didn't act like I've got 100 hours on this game. As a kid, it was probably more like 4 hours, but it felt like forever.
yeah.
So that was a big thing. And then the other thing is a big thing that we don't really get anymore, and I guess we have a kind of a replacement for it with subscription services, is renting games. Renting games was such a huge part. It's one of the reasons I played so many games growing up, just because I didn't have the cash to go and buy at the time, $80 or $100 game every whenever it was
Jesus.
time, and that was almost 30 years ago. But we could go rent a game for $4.99 and keep it for a week or whatever, every couple weeks, and do that. And so renting games and just being able to try stuff and having to try it based on the box art alone, not really knowing anything about the game. I didn't subscribe to any magazines. The internet wasn't really the thing it is now. So just like the idea of renting games or going over to your friend's house, playing a game, thinking it was awesome, and then going home and telling your mom you wanted it and having no idea what it was called, because all you did was play the game. You didn't see any marketing. You didn't see the
Yeah.
box. You just played the game. And so, yeah, just stuff like that, like with the internet the way it is now, which is a good thing in my opinion, to a large extent. There's just so much more potential for being able to know exactly what you want to play before you actually go and buy it. Whereas before it was like the Wild West. I'd buy a game, and if there was a bug in the beginning of it and they couldn't patch it, or if I just hated it within 5 minutes, you're out that week's rental.
What were some of like the standout games you rented? And like, it didn't have to be like a great game or a bad game, just like whatever comes to your mind.
Gex was one of the games I rented a lot, and I remember really not being quite sure if I was supposed to be playing it because of all the like references that were made in it. There's nothing like explicitly overly sexual, but there's some stuff that you're like, that seems. I was old enough to know. I'm like, that seems like a sex joke. I don't know. And then Tony Hawk Pro Skater. The first one is a game that I rented probably enough to have purchased it twice.
Wow.
I eventually did purchase it. I still have my original copy, but so that was a big game that I rented a lot. And then I remember renting on more than a couple occasions Mortal Kombat,
Oh,
the
the
original Mortal
original?
Kombat. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. But I own most of the games that I ever like. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm going to go back." The retro scene is like, "I'm going to go back and buy all these games I used to have." For me, like I still have all the games I used to have, most of them. But for me, like what I've done is gone back and buy all the games that I used to play or used to rent back in the day,
That's
because
awesome.
that was my experience.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter you posted that you posted your platinum trophy of Twisted Metal, and
Yeah,
you had something said like the nostalgia. I was like, oh yeah, you're probably alive and playing Twisted Metal when it came out. Like Jesus Christ, because
yeah,
I was born like 3 years after that franchise started. So
yeah.
it's
I
cool
need
that
to
you
get
have that memory.
I need to get a an actual box copy, like in the original long box of the first Twisted Metal. I have the greatest hits still from PS1. That's the one I had when I was a kid,
In
but I
the
didn't have the original
That's the
long
square
box.
case, right? With the
Yeah,
glass.
this yeah
Okay,
yeah the
I
square
see.
case with the green on the side.
Oh
That's the one
yes,
I
yes,
have.
yes. I
Yeah,
see.
but the original long box, like the actual, I don't know, looks almost like a DVD, but a little bigger and blockier. I don't have that one, but I've never really tried to get it either.
All right, so let's switch topics because this is one of the main things I want to ask you. We'll get back to gaming, but this has to be addressed. You were a goddamn mayor. Like
Yeah,
you were him, bro. Like I don't even mean to use that lightly. You were him. You were in charge of a municipal city.
yeah.
Like you were that guy. How the hell did that happen?
So I owned a business. Um, I mean, I was a citizen of the town too, but I owned a business, and there was just a lot of business owners. We'd get together for like planning, city events or whatever. And over time, people were just like, we need to find somebody new, because people weren't real fond of the mayor in office, including myself. I mean, not trying to speak ill of him, but it wasn't everybody's cup of tea. And so we were like, okay, well, we're going to kind of like try to seek out somebody who would run. And like eventually, like over the weeks, it was just like everybody just kind of looked at me, and I was like, no, no, I'm not. They're like, yeah, you're going to do it. And I was like, okay. So I ran, and I went out and campaigned. I knocked on thousands of doors.
Jesus. So you
Um,
actually did that shit.
yeah,
God
yeah,
damn.
never again though. And my goal was that I was going to do it for one term, to do it for 4 years if I won. That was like a commitment that I made to people when I would knock on their doors and gave a couple little speeches, and I had a debate and everything. So yeah, I got elected in a pretty decisive victory in the primaries, so against the current mayor, and then in the general election, I also got a pretty decisive victory, fortunately. So um, that's how I became the mayor. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you didn't want to do it. So like, what were you didn't have like a TV commercial or anything, right? You just had like billboards and flyers and just knocking on, like doing the door to door salesman types. I use salesman in quotes, obviously, but like, how is that process? Like, it's like, all right, so I'm gonna be a mayor. How the fuck do I start campaigning for this?
Yeah, it wasn't. I want to clarify. It wasn't that I didn't want to do it. It's that it went from me thinking I was helping find someone to do it to me being the one who was going to have to do it.
Oh, okay.
And I had to like just take that tonal shift in my head. So yeah, I was happy to do it and happy to serve my community. But as far as like getting myself out there, I mean, obviously the first thing I did was make a website, because that's what you do when you know how to make websites and you're a late 20s a guy who thinks that websites matter. But so I made a website, did the Facebook thing, everything, and pretty immediately just started going out and knocking on doors and telling people about myself and saying I was going to run. And I did have some people who either did it on my behalf or donated money to do billboards and like yard signs and handouts. And it's funny because none of those things are things I look at to decide who I want to vote for. I always just like either listen to them, or I go and look at their what their platform is and what they think, or listen to them in the debate or whatever. But that kind of stuff is effective. So I had people, and I think I did a YouTube video. That was the part of the campaign, or that Dustin helped me with, was doing all the like the media stuff. So I did a video that was on Facebook and YouTube, and it got like crazy amount of hits. Um, and then I want to say there was a commercial on the local TV station, like, the public access kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But I don't remember if it was like I actually voiced it or if it was just like a still image.
Did you like
Um,
talk shit about the like the opposition or no?
no, that wasn't really my style. I mean,
Okay.
there were people who asked me why I wanted to run, and I said, like, I think we need to change. And if they'd ask what was wrong with the current guy, I'd be like, well, here are some of the things I don't really agree with, or things I think I could do, help do better. But no, I'm not really like a shit slinger kind of guy. That's not really my style. Um, Unfortunately, that was his style, but and still is. But it worked out for me. Yeah, to
So I
not
like
shit slick.
during the debate, you just killed him with kindness, pretty much.
Well, so he was the current guy. We didn't have a debate for the primary,
Okay, so
if
he
I'm
was like too
recalling
scared,
correctly.
right?
I don't even know. Like, I'm trying to remember. It isn't that long ago, but it feels like forever ago. I think the people who like put on the debates didn't orchestrate one for that.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
see.
So I don't even think we had one for that.
Oh wow.
And then for the actual, so after I was successful in the primary, I ran in the general, and we did have a debate for that. But it was more of a conversation, and we answered questions. I mean, there was a little bit of back and forth, but um, I made it very intentional to never disparage another candidate, only to tell people what I could do better, rather than telling them what they did worse. Like that wasn't my thing.
I wish more politicians took that
Yeah, me
approach.
too.
So yeah, you did
Yeah,
good there.
yeah,
So what's the day to day of being mayor? So you wake up. I assume you get like a private limousine in your
yeah,
front door. You
yeah.
go to the town hall.
The red phone on
Escort.
your desk rings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
escorted by security 24/7. So tell me like what it was like.
So in our town, the mayor is a part-time position. It's supposed to be a part-time position. Obviously, uh, it takes the amount of time it takes. So sometimes it's part-time. Sometimes there were weeks where I was way overworking. It also only pays $10,000 a year.
What?
Yeah,
Oh wow! Come on,
they
bro.
haven't changed the pay structure for like decades, but and it doesn't. It did come with health insurance, which I didn't need because I had health insurance. But so I was able to like save the city some money there. But long and short is it's whatever anybody needs any time of the day. I mean, there are really only a few things that like your job requires you to do, and that is to like be the face of the city and to manage the police department. Well, being the face of the city also includes literally everything else. So, I mean, I was on like a council with people. I was the mayor, but there were other council people, and we all had like equal votes in those council meetings. But as far as like day to day operations, lots of people call. They first try the mayor when they have the smallest problem in the world. Their sewer drain needs cleaned out, so they call the mayor for some reason. Their garbage didn't get picked up, so they call the mayor, which the city doesn't even take care of the garbage. So there's lots of stuff like that. And my goal was instead of ignoring people was to try to educate them. Like, well, I actually have no control over that. If I want to call the garbage company, here's the number I call. And it's
Okay.
the number on their website. So like educating people in that way. But managing the police department, making sure that the it's the mayor's job to have the chief installed, and to make sure that protocols are being followed, and give your incentive, or not your incentives, your initiatives for different things that they do. Um, I had a lot of dealings with like our unions, the fire union, police union, the parks and roads unions, like stuff like that. So really, it's like a lot of administration stuff, and then just a ton of people just like want to meet with you about nothing. There's some important stuff there too, but it's like this person wants to meet with you about buying brand new benches that will cost the city $1 million, and you're like, well, we did that last year. Like, we don't need new benches again. So yeah, just a lot of like tedious, annoying stuff. And then you have like really important stuff that feels good to do. And then you have the personal interactions where like, yeah, I don't always want to talk to somebody about their loud neighbors, but when I do happen to speak with them and I'm able to like make some headway or point them in the right direction, that's nice. And then like we had city council meetings where we would get together and discuss issues and vote. So
And that's when like the public would come into and like ask questions, right?
yeah, yep, you got
Okay.
it. Mm-hmm.
So what was like some of the most heinous shit they asked, if anything?
Um, I don't. I gotta be honest. Like, obviously, you have some issues with mental health with certain people who have like really bizarre things going on in their brain that they're perceiving differently than someone else. So like you have to be able to sift through that stuff and know like how to handle like, okay, well, yeah, we'll look into that, or like contact us after, and then I guess just trying to help them the best that you can. I'm not a mental health professional by any means, but I think most people can still tell when like the difference between somebody who is suffering from some of those issues and somebody who isn't. And then, I mean, really, you don't have. You say heinous stuff, and there are certainly, you see like the Parks and Rec representations of people at city
Yeah, that's
council
what I
meetings.
was thinking of. Yeah.
I don't think I ever had anything like totally batshit insane that wasn't insane, but there were definitely people who like came in with completely wrong ideas, or they thought they knew how this process worked, or it didn't, or they would like come. And then there were other people who would like come to us with a very valid thing and be incredibly reasonable, and you're like, yeah, we can take care of that. Like that's easy. You don't have to be mad. So like there's a wide gamut of people, but I don't think I ever had anything like super bizarre other than the ones that were like obvious, like the sad mental health cases where they think somebody is hiding under the police are hiding under their car every night and trying to get them with raccoons. And yeah, there's some weird things like that, but for the most part, it's fairly reasonable people.
So when you were the mayor and you were him, so like, do you just like walk in the bar and like it's already on the house, like stuff like that? Do you get like those type of benefits or?
So during the time I was the mayor, I also owned my own brewery. So
Like,
most of the time,
this is what I'm talking about, bro. You're like Anthony Bourdain, man. Like,
is that the thing you knew that you found out on Constellation?
Yeah, I found out. Like, you mentioned like you own like 2 brick and mortar businesses. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
This guy's just too successful, bro.
One of them was a brewery. The other one was a cigar bar, speakeasy kind of like.
Oh
thing.
Shit, that's pretty cool.
So during that time, I didn't really have a lot of time to like go to the bar, but on the occasions that I would meet some people or go in somewhere to have like a like a business meeting or whatever, if people knew who I was, they would often offer. But a lot of times I would like wear a hat. I mean, my beard gives me away kind of, but like I'd just like put on a hat and like not try to make eye contact because I never did any of it for attention or publicity.
Okay.
For me, it was all about just trying to be a help, and I failed in some areas and succeeded in many others. So, I wasn't really looking for that, but certainly there were many times when either I would just get something brought to me, and
nice.
I didn't ask for it, and other times where I would try to turn it down, and of course somebody insists. So, it wasn't like an exceedingly common, just because I didn't go out terribly often. Because I just had so much going on, but it wasn't uncommon either. Yeah.
So, being the mayor, I assume like since you're a great guy, right? So you never do this, but in another timeline in your position, would you have like full power over like you can tell the police to do fucking anything you want them to do?
I think some mayors in our town have had that perception that they were able to do that, but. I guess you could, and if you had the correct corrupt people in place, that would work. But for the most part, you still have to follow laws. You can't just you can't be breaking laws and shit. I mean, I guess you could tell them to do it, and if they did it, suffer the consequences later. But for the most part, no, I don't think you actually could do that. Like, hey, no. I want you to go over here and shake up this guy I don't like. Like, that's not something. But in like. I don't know, jaywalking. Let's just take that as a really simple example.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think our town has ever enforced any kind of jaywalking ever. But I guess if I wanted to, I could have been like, okay, this is technically against the law. Go out and fine all the jaywalkers. I guess like that kind of stuff you could do. But as far as like, I want you to go and, kill this biker gang for me, probably not.
Yeah, I see. There's a pretty unknown quote called "With great power comes great responsibility."
I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, me neither. So
yeah.
I'm very glad that you followed those steps when being a mayor.
Yeah.
And just like there's no mob ties in being a mayor, right? There's nothing like that.
No, I say this jokingly, but I kind of wish there were. Like
to make it more interesting, right? Yeah.
People would accuse me of shit all the time, and I'm like, I would kill to be given the opportunity to say no to that to that thing. But like, like I did have one guy who, when I was running for office, was like, "Hey, I'll give you 10 grand for your campaign if when you get in office, you'll do this for me." And I was like, "No, I don't, I don't want to do that. First of all, and second of all, I don't need your 10 grand. Like, it's this whole campaign's costing me like $1,200. I don't need that." So
Yeah.
yeah, I had like one or two things like that where somebody presented me with a really kind of shitty thing, but for the most part, it was honestly kind of boring.
Yeah, like, and speaking of that, were there like any like smear campaigns or conspiracies against you, or like since the town was like relatively small, it wasn't really that
Um,
much?
so this is good and bad, I guess. So the guy I beat in the primary, that was the current mayor, he just likes to talk shit on everybody. So he ran kind of a smear campaign against me and everybody, because he just didn't like me at that point.
Okay, he had like a
And
super salty rage quit.
yeah, but like, honestly, the thing that got people, this actually goes back to our earlier conversation. The thing he would most often levy against me was that I was too young, which I was 29 at the time I was running. Which, hey, maybe that's valid criticism. I don't know. And that I played video games. And so I was obviously, so I guess with a certain age group there is that, but like those were the worst things he could say about me. Um, and for most people who were also young and like to play video games, that was a positive for them.
Yeah.
So like they enjoyed that, and I actually knocked on several doors, like wearing video game T-shirts and stuff, like many doors,
Oh, cool.
and I struck up tons of conversations. And it wasn't intentional. Like, I just wore what I wear. I didn't go out in the suit and tie. I just whatever I'm wearing that day,
Yeah.
that's what I have.
You had your Days Gone shirt on, just knocking on people's doors and stuff.
Yeah, definitely my Days Gone shirt for sure. So I just go and people would strike up conversations, and some of them decided to vote for me, some of them didn't. But what I was going to say is that the person I ran against in the general election, they had a lot of people talking shit on them, and none of it was directed from me. I respect that person quite a bit, but they just had some stuff in their past that wasn't terribly looked upon kindly, and people took advantage of it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm,
In fairness, now I can say that, like, I never talked that shit and I never encouraged it, but I also didn't discourage it necessarily. So like I probably should have done that, but at the same time, like, I didn't feel like that was my responsibility. My responsibility was to make the best case for me, not to make a case against someone else.
I give you a lot of credit because running for like being a politician, first, it must be like one of the scariest things ever, right? Because like once they find that one clip of you messing up in your past, that's going to be like the next talking point for a month in the social
I've
media.
never messed up though.
Yeah, that's so, that's
in my entire life I've never messed up one single time. So that's impossible.
Oh man, you should be mayor of Toronto. I feel like we could use your help right now.
Don't I have to be a citizen for that?
I know you have to be a citizen to become the prime minister. I don't know about mayor though.
Wow, maybe I'll try it.
Yeah, once LSM Live comes to Toronto, we'll hook up and I'll let you in. No mob ties included.
No.
So you mentioned you wanted to do one term.
Yeah.
Near the end of that term, were you starting to feel like decisions of regret? It's like, oh, maybe I could run for another term, or like, were you content with your decision?
No, I was very content with my decision. And I think it helped that I had that mindset from the very beginning. And I know a lot of people make that promise and then break it, which, of course, like 6 months after I got in office, people are like, so you're going to do another term? And I was like, first of all, I already told you I wasn't going to do another term. Second of all, I'm 6 months in. How would I know? Like, I don't know. So no, I wasn't regretting it. I was happy with the things I had gotten accomplished. I was ready to spend more time with my kids. That's not to say in the future maybe I won't run for city council or something like that. I doubt it, but I don't know. But I just wanted to be able to spend more time with my family and business stuff, and have a job that actually paid well. And so
nice. Yeah. And speaking on that last point, like, you never had like grander plans of being like a governor or a senator or anything like that, right?
No.
Just local politics was your max level.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even have plans for that, like I said earlier at the beginning. So, I mean, there's certainly, I was presented with like one individual who was elected in a position higher than me. I won't say exactly who because it would narrow them down, but did encourage me, like, you should run for this. And I was like, I don't want to. So they encouraged me. It wasn't like I ever had ambitions for it or there was like a shoe-in position. But yeah, that was enough for me. I'm good. I'm good there.
Yeah, man. It's still crazy to me that you were like you were that guy, man. You were him. But feel like I'm done pestering you about the marriage questions, so I'm going to pester you about something else.
Sure.
You mentioned you own two brick and mortar businesses, I should say. One was a cigar bar, one was a brewery. Where did you come up with the idea to do that?
My dad and I and a friend of ours started making beer. Like many people who have gone on to make breweries, back when craft beer was coming more into vogue, we started making beer in my dad's house, and we actually started out making wine, and then we
Oh wow,
decided that that took too long, so we made beer. And then one time we took some of the beer to my wedding when I got married, and that was in 2012. And people were like, "Oh, this is awesome! What is it?" We were like, "Oh, we made that." They were like, "This is really good." So we started like going to like beer pouring events and stuff like that. And eventually, like I like business. I had a guy who was really good at making beer, and my dad's really good at a little bit of everything. Kind of, we were all kind of like jack of all trades kind of thing. And so we were just like, well, let's do this. So we did. Just I always managed to turn things I like into a job, and it sucks, but that's what
I
happens.
respect that about you, man. Like, do what you love for real.
Yeah.
And speaking about like, so did you have to like trademark your own brand of beer? Like,
Hmm.
how did that process work?
Yeah, like we had to start an LLC. You have to get a license from the state. Um, Come up with your own recipes, name them things. Obviously, take the proper precautions to make sure that nobody rips off the name. Some of them we weren't too concerned about because we were mostly like a very regional brewery that just served like out of our place and maybe a few kegs around at like bars within an hour of us. So it wasn't like we were trying to go national and needed to really too much worry, but we did end up copywriting and trademarking a few different things for sure.
And the cigar bar, I'm
Hmm.
curious about because my dad fucking loves cigars, man. He like
Yeah,
always smokes like a chimney.
yeah.
So how did that turn out?
So it was another thing that we like cigars, and we have in Pennsylvania with a brewery license. You also have these things called storage license, and I don't know why they're called storage, but basically there are other places you can serve your drink, your beverages that you make. And so we had a storage license, so we made a location where we would be able to serve our beer, and also Pennsylvania liquors or any kind of alcohol made in Pennsylvania we could serve there. And we made it into a cigar lounge. So we had a big walk-in humidor and a ton of different seating and everything. And it was like we called it a speakeasy because it was really like it was underground. It was in a basement of a building. It
Oh,
was like
cool.
low lit, all brick walls, jazz music, that kind of thing. So um, again, it was just like, oh well, we want to be able to do more with this license, and we want to do something different than a brewery restaurant kind of thing. And we like cigars, so let's do that.
And those two operations are still running to this day.
No, so in 2021, the building next door to the brewery caught on fire, and it was like
Oh
a
shit.
massive fire. So our business was totally destroyed. We couldn't any longer use that building. Our lease was about to be up anyway, and we'd been kind of looking for a bigger location. The cigar bar stayed running. Of course, this is all after like all the big shutdowns from COVID.
Hmm.
So fortunately, that was still running and it was profitable and everything, but we didn't have anywhere to brew. So we started looking around, and of course, real estate prices just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. And we also saw more breweries going out and further out and out. So at the end of last year, we shut down So the way the licenses worked, like I explained, in order to have the cigar bar, we also had to have a brewery. And since we didn't have a brewery, at the end of last year, our license was going to expire for the cigar bar. So we decided, like, we don't really want to start from scratch, have to buy and build an entire new place. I was pretty much, full time working with LSM at that point. So my time had gone in a different direction. I had to, make revenue. I had to make money to feed my family. And my dad is, he's still young, but he's in his 50s and he's got a bad back. And we were both just kind of like, I don't really want to start from scratch and like have to start this whole thing over again. So we decided to shut it down and sell off all our assets, and so they're not still running. One was due to I think if the fire hadn't happened, they'd probably still both be in operation. But as of the end of last year, they are not.
Do you see like any reality in the future where you try doing that again or no?
I see a reality where I try doing a brick and mortar again. I don't know about another brewery. or a cigar bar or anything like that. Maybe a cigar bar, actually. I don't know. But food service just is so hit and miss. It varies so much with the time of year. There's so much, like, it's hard to get employees. If I were to ever do another brick and mortar type thing, which I kind of doubt, but if I were ever to, it would be like, I'd want to do like a retro store or a
Oh,
comic
that's cool.
store
I like that.
or like something more boutique that I could operate like, certain hours of the week and not make it, an all the time thing. But I would want to get to a place where I was like, it didn't have to succeed for me to feed my family, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, you want to be successful, but if I'm doing something, I really just want to also have fun. I don't want it to be super stressful if it doesn't have to be. If I don't have to put stress, like I have enough stress normally, if I don't have to put more stress on, I'm not going to.
I do want to ask. I don't mean this as like a fucking philosophical question. I'm not like Ken Burns or some shit, but how do you find like the motivation in yourself to do shit like this? Because like saying like, oh, I just want to make a brick and mortar store. That's like people say that all the time, but actually putting in the work to do it is another thing. So were you just always highly motivated as a person growing up, or what was the story?
I've definitely always been a bit of a workaholic. I think that most people become more of a workaholic as they get older, too. And I think it's actually gone the opposite way for me, where now I'm like, not like I'm rolling in dough, but I can pay my bills every month and maybe a little extra. And so I'm very much like, I kind of just am enjoying having time to spend with my family, time to play video games, and still work. Basically, I'm working pretty much a full time. I am working a full time job and sometimes a little more. So it's it's been good that I've been able to take a break from that. But then I still needed those creative things in my life, right? Like I have the YouTube channel, which I haven't posted in about a month, and I don't actually have an idea for my next video either. But when I do it, I want to enjoy it. I want
Yeah,
to have fun. So for me, like, unless there is a necessity for me to ever do that kind of thing again, I don't know if I will. Unless it's just like I'm bored and have the ability to do it and think it'd be fun. But for the most part, I think I'm becoming less motivated to overwork myself as I get older than I used to be.
I see. And speaking about things that you love doing, in the middle of all this, being a mayor, having two companies, you also worked in the game industry. So tell me about your journey with that. Like, how did that start, and how was like it clearly worked out for you since you're working for like the biggest gaming Patreon in the world. So how does that feel like?
Well, my journey in the game industry actually probably starts in about 2009. I
Oh
had a
wow.
website with a friend. We did a podcast first and then a website.
Oh, you mentioned
Uh,
this on. Yeah, I remember this.
did
Yeah,
I? Okay.
yeah.
And we did really well. There was less competition at the time, and there was also like we were both like in college, just out of college at the time. And so we were like doing a lot, and we were getting quite a bit of attention, and we were getting invited to events and getting, like, back when they still sent out physical review copies of games. We were getting that kind of stuff, and we ended up hiring like a staff to work with us. And
Oh wow.
so we did pretty well until my buddy kind of went. I mean, it wasn't like we were paying big money or paying ourselves big money or anything, but it was, it was good for what we were doing. And our goal was to have fun, to do, like, to make a little money and have fun at the same time. So my buddy actually ended up getting hired on at a game company and had to sign a non-compete. So he ended up leaving. And then a little while later, I had gotten married and was starting a master's while I was also working full time. And I I decided just to, like, I was going to hand it over to the employees if they want, or like they weren't employees, but like the people who worked with me, and most of them had also had things like that where they moved on. And so we ended up shutting it down, sold the domain, made some money there, and for a few years I pretty much I played video games. I would buy and resell collections from people and try to make a little money that way.
Oh cool.
Also try to, like, I'd buy a big collection and then keep what I wanted and sell the rest, and usually end up making money still somehow. So, and then probably in 2015, I think I told Dustin, our friend Dustin Furman, that I work with now, that I wanted to go to PAX, and we talked about it. And I had gone to PAX years earlier, and so we went to PAX, and he's like, you should forget about this whole being the mayor thing. Well, this was when I was running, so it was 2016, 2017, something like that. He's like, you should forget about this mayor thing and just, come work on the game site with me. And I was like, how about I just do both? So I did,
Oh
because I'm
wow.
an idiot and I just stacked more onto my plate. So we did a a podcast, which we grew over time, and a website where we got other friends. None of it was paid. We just got friends that wanted to write and got review copies, presented ourselves very strongly and very well, got accepted to a lot of industry events, got invited to press conferences for E3 and stuff like that. It was really cool. I still do that podcast now, although Dustin's not on it anymore, but with a couple other friends. And so I started. So I asked Colin. Colin was asking for people to ask him to be on Fireside Chats. So when I was in office, his old show about like interviewing people. So I asked him, "Hey, do you want? I'm coming out for E3. I can be on the show if you want." And he's like, "Yeah, I'd love to. That'd be awesome." So we met, and Dustin went with me. Well, like 6 months later, I heard Colin mention he was looking for an editor. I had too much on my plate. I told Dustin. He applied, got the job, has progressed through there. When Dustin's role changed, he needed a new editor, so he brought me in.
Nice.
And that's just kind of the rest is history, I guess you could say.
You mentioned like being invited to like press conferences and like gaming events. What are some of like your highlights, your memories of that time?
I remember being really young and stupid. I wasn't that young, I guess, but in 2011, my first industry event I ever went to was PAX East in Boston.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, there weren't as many people trying to get like media access and stuff. And I remember like I just had that badge on. That's what they gave me to get in. And every booth we walked past would like jump out into the aisle to grab us and like want us to come look at their game. And in my head, I'm thinking like, do they know how many hits a month we get? Like it wasn't nothing, but it certainly wasn't like crazy. But they just wanted coverage, and that was good. And I'm talking even like bigger games. And I remember us jokingly being like in our hotel rooms and being like, "Well, I can do whatever I want. I have this badge." Just being stupid.
Yeah.
And then we did like, we set up like a studio in our hotel room where we live streamed in the evenings during that. So that was a lot of fun. And then a couple years ago, I went to PAX with 4 or 5 buddies, and we all worked together. And I don't know, it was just a good time. We set up all sorts of appointments. Everybody always complimented us on our professionalism. Did tons of coverage. Like I'd see like big sites, like the big sites out there, talk about how many pieces of coverage they had from PAX, and I'm like, we have double that many.
Oh shit, let's
and
go.
Like so, like that was just a good feeling to know that like even if we weren't making millions of dollars, we were still like doing good work, and it was actually well written, and it was actually good videos, and it was good stuff like that. So I think just having those experiences, and I told this story on Constellation, I think, but I think probably one of the cooler events we ever got to go to was Oculus was having an event, and we got invited, and it wasn't unusual for us to get invited to private showings, but they like picked us up in an Escalade, and they had Fiji water in there, which of course top of the line water, and they took us to like this abandoned warehouse, and then took us inside, and it was like this glorious mansion inside, and I was like, "So when's it start?" And the guy was like, "Oh, it started. Everybody's here now." And there were like 4 of us outlets there. We were there with like IGN and Polygon, and so it was just like that was cool. And I was like, "Why are we here?" But also cool that we're here. So I always say Mark Zuckerberg got me a limo and fed me.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think Elon Musk would do that for you or anyone.
I mean, he doesn't know me. Maybe he would. If he knew what a great guy I was.
Hey man, once X starts their gaming subscription service, the industry is about to change, man.
If he wants to donate a Tesla towards me, I mean, I'll take it. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll take a Tesla too.
Yeah,
I need to get my G1 first, but I'll take a Tesla. You mentioned E3. What is the atmosphere like in E3? Because I've always viewed E3 from behind the scenes, like as a viewer, like the majority of people. So I assume you've been to E3 before it became open to the public, and after it was open to the public. So how was it like those 2 eras of E3?
I'm trying to remember before it was open to the public. If I was
the first year was open to the public was 2017. Which
I don't think I was there. So I got invited to E3 in I think 2010.
Oh shit.
And I couldn't attend because I don't remember why, but I couldn't attend. And I was devastated because like at that point that was everything that I had looked forward to for years. And then when I did get to go, I think my first I've only been to E3 maybe 3 times. I think my first time was in 2017 or 2018, but I've
Okay.
never been as public. I've been there as
Media.
like press media.
Okay.
So I don't know what the average experience is like for a non-media person, because when you're media, you can have like appointments set up. Generally, if you want to see something, they'll put you in line ahead of people because you have a media badge or whatever. Um, but the stories I've heard is that it's much different. But I can't speak from first-hand experience.
Did you actually watch a press conference in the stage or never?
Yeah, I've been to multiple Bethesda press conferences, multiple Microsoft ones. I was at the last Sony conference.
Oh, is that the one where they like moved everyone from room to room?
Yes,
Oh my
when
god.
they revealed more about Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
How was that like, by the way? Like, was everyone confused in that situation?
we were a little confused, but I don't think we were nearly as confused as the people on TV.
Oh yeah.
Or that
It
were like
was
watching the
the
TV.
weirdest shit ever, dude.
Yeah. It was like, for us, it was like, okay, well, this is kind of weird. We're going into this room, and then, oh, wow, it's a church. And then they're like, okay, move on to this next room. I'm like, okay. And then there's this giant screen. And then the thing that the people didn't see after that, it was this giant screen and the man playing a flute, by the way. The thing that people didn't see after that was, after the press conference was over, we went outside of the place, and it was like this space that was set up for events. Like that was what they did, but it was a lot of parking lots, and they had turned it into like a miniature New York City, themed like Spider-Man stuff.
Cool.
Because that was when Spider-Man was releasing.
Mm-hmm.
And free food, free drinks, lots of places where you could stand and play games. And it was a really cool spot. And I remember just like hanging out with tons of people like I had never met before, but knew from the industry, or like we followed each other on Twitter or whatever. And so like that was a really cool experience. And you got to have more, if I'm remembering correctly, I might not be. You got to have a little bit more like hands-on time with the games that they had shown. No, Spider-Man was the only one you could have hands-on time with. I don't think we had time on with like Ghost or Last of Us, but there were like advertisements for that around, but they were more like interactive exhibits.
Cool.
And then, like I said, the miniature like New York City was cool. Yeah.
I do have to ask you, because you mentioned Bethesda conferences. My main takeaway from that is like there was always the woo girl. Like after any fucking sentence Pete Hines said, you hear like whoa in the background. Yeah. Was that real, or was that like a fake? Like audio?
I mean, it was really happening in the room. I'm sure that their reaction wasn't real.
So that woman was real.
Oh, she was real.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there were multiple people like that, and I think people do that because they know it gets a reaction. Like, you know, they want to be able to later be like, "Hey, did you hear the woo girl? That was me." You know, and like I think that do you remember the moment where where Keanu Reeves came out on stage?
Yes.
Somebody said you're breathtaking, and of course he said, "You know, you're breathtaking."
That was Xbox 2019, right?
It was, yeah. I was sitting like 4 or 5 rows behind that guy that shouted it out. Yeah, but not that makes I don't know why I said that, but I was there. Like that was real. That was a real moment. But then ever since then, like anytime you see a live press conference, somebody like tries to get that line in there. So it's like this internet, and I think those people are real. I'm not like Xbox a few years ago had like their hardcore fans that came to like they had them set in the very front rows with those T-shirts on that said I played the most powerful. I'm all about whatever you got to do to get your marketing done, do it. But those people weren't plants. They just also weren't industry members. They were just hardcore fans.
Okay.
So Xbox was really smart, or whoever put on their press conference was really smart to put them right there. So I think those people are real. I don't always know if their reactions are genuine or if they're just trying to be able to make a name. But I really don't buy into Bethesda paid somebody to make a big deal out of everything.
So it's not as insidious as some people on the internet make it out to be.
No, it's annoying, but I don't think it's insidious.
Yeah, I always think about that Xbox. There's a picture of an Xbox fan watching the press conference, and he's like sleeping out cold. And it's like the fucking funniest shit ever. Dude.
Yeah. The poor guy probably had a hot day in the sun or something, and now he's immortalized.
And well, E3 is pretty much dead. Mm-hmm. I do want to ask, like, if you were in charge of bringing back E3, what would you do? Like, how would you revive it and make it? I feel like you're the man of the job, bro, because you're the fucking mayor of a city. So you have to deal with like thousands and thousands of people. You own like 2 brick and mortar businesses. Like when you want something done, you get shit done, and that's what I respect about you.
Appreciate it. I guess I don't know what I would do now to bring it back. I don't know if you can bring it back now, but certainly the pandemic really disincentivized a lot of people from wanting to have physical in-person events. But I think the biggest thing that if you get the media on board, generally the general public will be on board. And the media, after they opened it up to the public and more people, the thing that everybody really started having a problem with was there were just so many people. Like it was so many people at E3 on the show floor, not at the press conferences necessarily, but on the show floor.
And that was after the public was invited. Well, you can anybody could like buy a ticket for it. I mean,
yes, there was. And I think that probably the biggest thing that could have potentially saved things was to make one day of it, or even part of a day, media only. I think that would have kept media invested, would have made them feel more valued. PAX does that. It's only like an hour or a couple hours in the morning of one of the days, but like you get to go in and literally you have the run of the place. Like you can see whatever you want. You don't have to wait in line if you don't have an appointment, whatever. And granted, yeah, there are appointments and stuff like that, but sometimes something gets revealed the day of one of the press conferences and nobody set up appointments for it. So like, something gets shadow dropped or shadow released or announced. And so you want to book an appointment for it, but it's too late because you don't have any slots left. So I think that would have been one of the things. I also think the fact that they were just charging, and probably they had to because of the economics of things, but just charging an astronomical amount of money for vendors to be there. And I think that's probably one of the reasons Sony pulled out. Not because they can't afford it, but because they were like, I mean, we're talking $1 million+ here for people to have. And that depends on the size of your booth. So like, if
and
they
that's just for
it,
floor space, right?
Yeah, just for floor space.
Jesus.
Yeah. They still got to pay like all their employees. They got to design all these booths. They got to, everything. And I think that if there was a way to bring, and I think that's part of why they started letting general public in, but if there was a way to subsidize those costs a little more and keep people invested, like if Sony hadn't pulled out, if Sony were still committed to E3, other people would still be committed to E3.
I agree with you with that 100%.
Yeah.
And I do want to ask about your time at LSM, Last Stand Media. How's your workflow like? Like, what's a day of work for Ben Smith at Last Stand Media?
It kind of depends on everybody else, for better or for worse, I guess. So, for the most part, the majority of my job is editing. So, editing audio. So, when a show gets recorded, I get notified that it is recorded. People upload their files. I go in, I download them, I edit them, I do timestamps if necessary. I make placements for the ads. I export, label, and upload. And that's pretty much the process. Now, sometimes a show gets recorded out of schedule, or a show gets recorded late, or a show gets recorded early and wants to go up early, or immediately after it's recorded. So it can change day to day, but for the most part, it's pretty stable. Generally, I edit 5 to 7 days a week, depending on if the schedule stays intact. The ideal for all of us is that we only have stuff 5 days a week, and then we still have enough content for the other 2 days. But sometimes things other people's schedules don't line up, and I end up editing every night.
So you have to listen to the whole podcast to make sure there's no.
Yeah.
So you listen to all 4 hours of Sacred Symbols every week.
4 would be a low episode, but yes, I do.
Oh man, you're a trooper, dude.
Well, I mean, I'm getting paid for it. In fairness, It's not like it is about a topic I'm interested in, so it's not like it's torture, but it is a long night for sure those days.
And speaking more about LSM, you mentioned that you had to like help produce and manage live events. So how's that process like? Like, because I know you probably have some experience with it, but how was it like making that first event in Butler compared to your latest event?
Yeah, so the difference between those two is that the first event in Butler was very much like Dustin and I wanted to do it, and Colin was like, I guess if you want to. Like, he didn't understand that anybody would want to come, I think, at first. And then after that, he was like, oh, we're going to sell out. But none of us were really sure. We just knew we wanted to do something. And so Dustin and I worked on it. Dustin had a lot of other stuff going on, so I mostly did like all the running around to different businesses, getting things lined up, making the rentals. But Dustin helped with like the a lot of the promotional stuff and the physicality of it, actually like setting up the stage and everything. Whereas like in Houston, which was our last show, is probably just as much, if not more, work, which was it's part of my job. It's like part of my salary that I get paid, but it's pretty much solely on me, with the exception of a few like promotional materials and stuff like that. But it's also like a lot different because like I'm calling the venue, and they already have a stage, they already have chairs, they already have a ticketing system, they already have people to run lights and sound, and like it's an actual professional place that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So then I book like all the travel for everybody. I book hotel rooms. I annoy people to death about like everything that I need from them, and reminding them about their tickets and reminding them about their flights, and just stuff like that. So like basically I plan the events. I put all the materials together for the actual show. So any kind of like PowerPoints or media presentations that there's going to be, intros, outros. And then on the day of the show, it's just getting everybody wrangled, making sure everybody's there on time. They're all mic'd up, ready to go, that they have the intro, they're out on stage, and then I usually MC the events, which I really enjoy. I really like doing that.
So there's been no like fatal flaw or errors like trying to get this thing running. Everything's been kind of smooth sailing once the presentation aspect of it starts.
Oh, like once it actually starts?
Yeah,
we
like
haven't had any big issues.
nice.
No. I mean, the last event, the venue told me they had like a clicker, like to progress your PowerPoint slides or whatever.
Oh, okay.
They told me they had one, and then I was like, great. So I got there and tried to use it, and it would just like fast forward everybody's slides. So like there was a little bit of but I ended up getting that fixed at the midpoint in the show. Nice. When we did intermission. So it was all good.
That's good. That's good to hear. And I'm not trying to get any like fucking insider info, but you guys are planning to do more live events in the future, right?
Yeah, we are. There's a little bit of complications just because like some of the plans we had for this year didn't quite work out, just because of timing and everything. There's a lot of stuff going on in like September, October with people in our company. And then like it's big review season right now.
Oh, yeah.
So like just coordinating everybody and getting things all together. So I don't know if there's still going to be one this year or not. That's still to be determined, or to be announced, I guess I should say. But I'm pretty sure first half of next year there'll be a pretty big show that I don't have all the details for, or any of the details really yet. But that's the plan right now, is something early next year.
Yeah. Do you I'm not gonna ask you to reveal anything, but do you have like desires and hopes to do it in other countries? Or
yeah, we do.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's more of a challenge because like there's a time difference.
Oh yeah.
I gotta be up till, I either gotta wake up at 5 a.m. or stay up till 5 a.m., which I stay up till 5 a.m. anyway. So making call, and I'll convey that like we were looking at London.
Oh wow.
So I just started doing some like early investigation, and so calling people at 5 a.m. my time just to try to get venues lined up and everything. So that none of that is happening yet. There's no firm plans, okay, audience, but that's just been a consideration. Just like doing the basic groundwork to see like, okay, what does this even cost? Can we make this work or not? So
awesome. Yeah, whenever you guys are in Toronto, fingers crossed, I will be there.
I think you're only about like 4 hours from me, at least. That's kind of crazy.
I am actually.
You're in a different country, but you're only 4 hours from me.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about going to New York later this year, but I'll see about that.
Yeah,
I do want to ask. Let's bring it back to games. The current generation: PS5, Xbox Series X. I guess Switch is both. Who knows?
Yeah.
Switch, Nintendo just does their own thing. How do you feel about this console generation so far?
I feel I like it. I like the consoles. I like the way we're progressing, but I am disappointed that I don't think this is anybody's fault, but I just don't know that we're going to see as much oomph out of new systems as we have in the past. Like at this point, how much better can something look? I'm sure if you took that clip and showed it to me in 15 years, I'd be like, what an idiot. And I'm sure if I said that 15 years ago, I would have meant it. And, of course, things are way different now. But I just don't think we're going to get as much new stuff. I think it's going to be more like system handling, RAM, that kind of stuff in the future. For the most part, I'm pretty okay with this generation. Like I said, I mostly play on PC, which has had more problems than ever, it feels like, this console generation.
Yeah.
But the actual consoles, I'm fine with them. They do everything I want them to do, and probably more that I don't utilize. So I've been good with it.
So yeah, you mentioned being slightly disappointed about this console generation. Do you feel like the PS4 slash Xbox One generation so far, compared like we're like 3 years into this one, so 3 years into the PS4 generation, don't you feel like it was a little bit more exciting? Because that's how I feel.
Yeah, I do feel like it was more exciting, and I don't know particularly what led to that. But it felt like there were more like groundbreaking types of things and more games that came out that was like, wow, I can really tell the difference here. And I think part of the problem is that we're being held back a little bit, at least so far. We've seen a lot of games that have come out for, PS5, for instance, that have also been on PS4. And I don't think that's a great thing. There's also a part of me that's like, well, what does that hurt? But I paid for a new console. I want the new console experience. And yeah, it's faster, it's better, whatever. But I want games that are made specifically for the new consoles.
You're talking about more about like game design. That's like,
yeah, I think so. Sure. We're pretty much getting the same games, but with like, new textures and graphics. But nothing's changed, and I don't know what I want that to be. I'm not a designer. I don't know what a new feature in a video game would be that we've never had before, but I know that I want that. So somebody smarter than me can figure it out. But yeah, that's what I want
for sure. Because like I look at a game like Spider-Man 2, and I'm pretty excited about it. But like, it's like I'm not expecting it to like use the PS5 and change its game design. It's just going to be another open world action adventure game. Which I'm fine with.
like God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah, exactly.
I was very excited for it, and I loved it.
Me too.
But it wasn't anything crazy innovative or new from the last one.
Yeah, you could argue that the Greek games had like a way bigger sense of scale than Ragnarok.
Yeah,
and
especially in that time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like it's funny because like you look from PS1, PS2, obviously a big jump. PS2 to PS3 was the HD era, and I would argue that PS3 to PS4, like you look at a game like Killzone Shadowfall.
Yeah,
and it looked way better than The Last of Us or Uncharted 3 or God of War 3. So I'm not feeling really any immediate jump from the PS5 generation. I will say Demon's Souls looks fucking incredible.
Yeah, it does.
But it's a PS3 game.
Right.
It's not really changing. I guess the load times are super fast, but
that is probably the defining characteristic of the new generation, in my opinion, is the load times. But this is like an elitist point of view, but coming from a PC perspective where I've always had like really good hardware, I'm like, well, it's nice they caught up, like it's nice that they finally got to this point.
So I do have to end with this. Sea of Thieves.
Oh, okay.
What were you?
I just was worried you were gonna, ask something crazy.
Nah, don't worry. I won't do that to you yet. But Sea of Thieves. So I remember when this game was announced, and like I feel like it was like E3 2014, 2015, and I was like, all right, it looks whatever. I don't really care about it. And then it comes out. It has like, I don't want to say an awful launch, but pretty bare bones launch.
Yeah.
And now it's like one of the biggest Xbox games of all time. So tell me your journey about Sea of Thieves.
So I didn't play Sea of Thieves at all until, I don't know if it was 2018 or 2019. And our friend Dustin and a friend of ours, Dave, we wanted to get together and play it one night. And none of us had ever played it before, really looked at it too much. It must have been 2019 because, I don't know, it doesn't matter. And so we hopped on, we played it for like a couple hours, had no idea what we were doing. And then, we finished and I was like, okay, that was fun. I deleted it and never looked back at it. And then a couple years later, during the COVID, still it was in COVID times, my buddy Justin asked who wants to play Sea of Thieves. And I was like, I don't really care about that game. Like, I don't know. And we had another friend, Josh, who was like, I kind of want to be a pirate. I was like, all right. We would all do that. We would be like, all right, let's play this game. And then the other two would be like, nah, I don't want to play it. And then we'd all play it. It would be fine, whatever. So we would kind of like switch games. And finally I was like, okay, let's play it. So we started playing it. And when I was actually playing with my friend Justin, who knew how to play the game, like when I played it before, it was just, we didn't even know how to like lower the sails or anything, you know? And so we were just fumbling around. But when I played with my friend Justin, I was like, oh, wow, this game is a lot of fun. And so just going through like playing a lot of it and mostly playing from like the PvE perspective, running from other ships a little bit that were like coming to attack us and just doing like missions and stuff. I just really fell in love with like the world and that you could be in the world and have fun. And then I started watching a streamer named Boxy Fresh, and he's like the biggest Sea of Thieves streamer that there is. And in Sea of Thieves category, that means like probably a max of 5,000 viewers, but it's still huge.
Yeah, it's still a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah. And he just was, he pretty much only does PvP, you know, player versus player, attacking other ships, stealing their stuff. And I just was like, oh, wow, this looks like so much fun. And the thing about Sea of Thieves is like you're in this shared world and there's like open comms. And so you can just like interact with other people constantly. It's not like a Call of Duty lobby where you're just running around shooting each other and you might hear a death comm once in a while. It's like you're actually able to like communicate with them verbally all the time if you want to, if you're close enough to them. And so just like seeing that, and I just started like trying to get a little more aggressive and playing a little more and like watching more and more streamers and watching videos and tips and tricks, and to the point where some of the people I used to play with don't really like to play anymore because they were more interested in the PvE life than the PvP life. And so since it's been about 2.5 years since that point where I started playing again, or I played for the second time with my friend Justin and Josh. And since that point, I think I've got like 2,600 hours in the game.
Oh, wow.
And I mostly only played it. Well, this was true until a couple weeks ago, but I mostly only play the game on stream. So pretty much all of my time playing the game has also been streaming. And I'm not like the best player by any means, but I've become a pretty proficient PvPer, and I know a lot about the game, and I really enjoy the world. And I still play like everything else. I play a ton of games, but most people still associate with me with Sea of Thieves because that's really the only game I stream. I'll occasionally throw something else in
It's
there.
a great
like,
stream game.
It really is because it's so dynamic. Like you're never going to have a session that's like your last one ever.
And
so that's my journey.
Did you like when you started playing the game? They didn't start doing like the crossover collaborations yet, right? Like the Pirates of the Caribbean, or
no? That was like 6 months after I started playing, probably.
Okay.
That they did the Pirates of the Caribbean crossovers. Yeah,
and they did what was
Monkey
it?
Island.
Monkey Island,
recently.
yes.
Yeah, it's actually in progress. Like they did the first part of it, and there's 2 more parts of it coming.
Oh, cool! That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you ever see Sea of Thieves like be that big where it would have like major licenses involved?
I remember when it got announced. I remember thinking like, "Oh, this looks like a Pirates of the Caribbean wannabe," and then come to find out it actually was. They did have that in mind when they made the game, and then they eventually got to work with Disney and everything. So I don't know that I ever really thought about it. Period. There's the train again. It's really loud.
And Nathan Drake's on there. He's just trying to shake him off.
Yeah. But I don't know that I ever really saw the game becoming that big necessarily because I never really thought about it. And then once I realized how big it was, I was like, why aren't more people paying attention to this? This is insane. So yeah, it's really cool. It's cool
it's
game.
like one of the crown jewels of the Xbox One generation, if you really think about it. Maybe not the way it started, but it definitely it's like the only game from that gen that lived on.
Yeah.
Really.
The thing about the game right now is that it's really buggy and there's a lot of issues with it. And that's partially because it was made primarily for Xbox One. And they've added, at the beginning, like the game worked fine, but it was bare bones. Like there was almost nothing to do. And it was a lot of fun if you were just in the world, but there wasn't anything to do other than like fight other ships and do a couple little events. And now they've added so many things to it. And obviously they're trying to run Xbox One, Xbox One S, Xbox, whatever the most powerful Xbox One was. I can't remember the name of it. The One X. Xbox Series S and X, cloud, PC of all varying degrees. Like they're trying to run so many things on it now, or it run on so many things that honestly, my hopes for the game are that they eventually, because they said they had a 10-year plan, and that was 5 years ago it came out. So if they're really going to do 5 more years, which they have the player base to do it, that they move it to Unreal 5, uh, allow Xbox One players to either play it on cloud or gate them off to the servers the way they currently are, and then let everybody else move on with better experiences, because it's getting rough. It's still a beautiful game. It looks fantastic, but sometimes things don't work quite right.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
little
like
annoying.
the Destiny 2 conundrum, right?
It
Where they're
really
still
is.
making
Yeah,
expansions for PS4 and Xbox One.
yeah,
I remember this was during the PS4 generation when GTA Online was saying, like, yeah, this is going to be our last update for PS3 and Xbox 360. You guys have to move on. And I was
yeah.
like, oh, wow, that's like a. Anytime that happens, I always feel like, all right, now we're in the current generation. Like, we fucking
Right.
moving that old stuff in the past. Let's just move on. And one thing I do want to ask you about Sea of Thieves, because you do mention it's like has 5 more years of content, which will probably most likely be fulfilled.
Yeah.
After that, though, do you want like a proper sequel? Do you want them to just continue updating Sea of Thieves? Do you think this is going to be like a forever, like a true forever game?
I think it could be, but they have to be willing to leave behind something,
Okay.
because it's the only game I complain about this much and still will play. Like, other games have this many bugs, I'm not going to play it. And there are lots of other games with more bugs than this that people still play by the millions. So I think that the game could go on for a long time, but they're going to have to eventually make some tough choices about leaving certain player bases behind potentially. And I think that I don't know that they need a sequel. I think there's potential for one, but I really think that they have the world they need now. They just need to be able to fix the back end and the infrastructure with it. And the only way they can really do that is, I think, to move it to a new engine. With all the stuff they've added to it, it's impossible for that old engine. And I mean, you've seen the game. There's tons of water everywhere. The
Oh
whole
yeah.
map is covered. Everything's always rendered in. Like, it's crazy that they're able to make it work at all. So I give them props for that. But I think if they want to keep it going, and I think they should, because it's making them money and it could be even better, they're going to have to move to something new for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very happy for Rare because
Yeah,
there were always that studio was like, oh, Xbox ruined them, they wasted them, and I'm very thankful that they actually had like a probably their biggest game ever. So it was like after they got bought by Xbox, there was just like a decade and a half of nothing
right.
substantial, really.
Yeah.
So I am happy for them for that success. All right, last set of questions.
Okay.
Year 2023, it's been probably one of the best years of gaming ever. So
Mm-hmm.
give me some of your highlights of this year so far.
Oh man, what has come out this year so far? Let's see. Obviously, Tears of the Kingdom is really good. Um, I guess Midnight Suns was last year. What else has come out this year?
Dead Space,
Okay, I
RE4.
haven't played the new Dead Space. I played the remake just this year though, or the original just this year though,
Oh, okay.
for the first time. Man, I need to look at my library and see what else I played. Oh, dude, Hogwarts Legacy, phenomenal game. I'm gonna pull up my PlayStation and Xbox trophies here, because
Nice.
I have such a bad memory that I can't remember what else I've played. I just finished playing Remnant 2. That was a phenomenal game that I had no idea I was going to enjoy, or that I was even looking forward to. Let's see. Of course, Final Fantasy 16. I had a really good time with. I loved it. Probably played that game for 50, 60, 70 hours, something like that.
Damn.
Um, God of War was last year, right?
Yep.
So I didn't finish playing it till this year, I think. I'm trying to think of what else has come out now.
Hi-Fi Rush was this year.
Hi-Fi Rush is just okay. Okay, I'm saying it here. I'm saying it now. It's fine. That's all there is to it. Obviously, who can forget Redfall? I'm just kidding.
Oh, yeah.
That game sucked.
That was rough.
Man, I've played so many games, but I think a lot of them came out like late last year. And I can't even remember what else I've played.
Star Wars?
I'm playing it. I'm hoping to play it in November.
I see. Okay. When it's like finally patched or.
Well, I was waiting for the patch, but there's just been so much to play that, and I know I'm playing Baldur's Gate right now. I know I'm going to play Starfield, and then also Sea of Stars comes out in between those. So I didn't want to like get into Star Wars before that time period.
I see. Okay.
Man, I feel like I've played other current games, but I can't think of what they are right now.
Well, speaking on that, like what you mentioned, Starfield and some other games. The game you're most excited for the rest of the year,
Yeah,
Starfield.
I'm super excited for Starfield. I'm excited for it. I'm probably the most excited for Spider-Man, but in a very different way. I'm
Oh yeah.
excited to play more Spider-Man, but I know exactly what it's going to be.
Hmm.
Starfield is like a world of unknown still. So that is the reason I'm excited for it. I'm playing Baldur's Gate right now, but I'm only like 4 hours in, so I'm excited to actually get into the game and see what it is. There really isn't much else that's like super on my radar. Obviously, I mentioned like Sea of Stars. I really want to play. I'm pumped for that. But we really don't we don't have a ton of other stuff coming out this year that's like really kind of tentpole things.
I see. Not even like a Mario Wonder or a new Super Mario Brothers RPG.
Yeah, I'm happy both of those are coming out, and I'm definitely going to play them. But I'm long past the point of being able to get excited about games like that are just the next iteration of the same game. Super Mario RPG, I think it's amazing because I love the original, and I'm so happy people get to experience it. I wish it was, I wish they were just putting out the original like on the Nintendo Online. And Mario Wonder, I'm sure, is probably going to be Game of the Year contender. Honestly, I'm going to love it, most likely. But I don't know. I have a very different definition for excitement than a lot of people do. Like people are like, "Are you hyped for this?" And I'm like, "I don't really get hyped. I'm just like looking forward to it, I guess." So yeah, those games are interesting to me, and they're probably going to be phenomenal. But I don't think I'm as excited about them as some other stuff.
Yeah, like you save your hype for like the Gran Turismo movie or the Twisted Metal
Absolutely.
show. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
I think Dustin and I are going to go see the Gran Turismo
Oh, let's go,
movie soon.
dude.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
saw it a few weeks ago and
yeah,
it was fucking awesome.
yeah.
Like coming from me, I know, like, oh wow, like surprise, surprise, but I genuinely thought it was a great time.
Nice.
Ben, thank you so
Yes.
much for being here. This was an awesome chat.
Thanks for having me.
Before I let you go, just let everyone know where they can find you.
Probably Twitter is the best place. I usually promote everything else on there. I'm at Ben Smith 2588. I'm on Twitch and YouTube at Ben is Handsome, and I'm everywhere else as a ghost. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Everyone watching this, make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel and follow him on Twitter and support Handsome Phantom as well. They're doing great work. Ben, thank you once again for joining me here for another episode of Radic's Rotation, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.